Grab your cocktail and get ready for this episode of the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast. Welcome to the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast, where we talk all things Freemasons while drinking an old fashioned. I'm Brian, and guess what? We've got somebody not from Texas, not from Kansas, not from Oklahoma, not from Cali, but it's going to be interesting. Chris, you're from Rhode Island.
I'm from Massachusetts, but I practice Masonry in Mass and Rhode Island.
Okay. See, I knew I was going to screw that up. Well, welcome to the podcast.
My wife, she actually started her Masonic life in Rhode Island, so it's a little easy to get confused. She was an Eastern Star long before I was ever a Mason.
Okay, well, good. Well, I didn't know that, so I can't use it as an excuse as much as I'd like to. So Chris, have you ever seen an episode of the podcast?
I've watched quite a few. I've seen some on Rumble, and I know I'm pretty sure I've seen a few on YouTube, but definitely Rumble. I know I have.
Yeah, appreciate that. So, as you know, we like to know as much about the man as we do the Mason. So let's push Masonry to the side, my friend. Tell us who Chris the man is.
Well, I probably all your guests say that's a really hard question. It's almost, I don't want it to sound like a job interview. So I asked my harshest critics what they would say, which was my wife and my daughter. And then I asked my son, and he didn't give me much, but I asked my wife and my daughter, and they said, well, they go, in short, my daughter goes, you're a really good dad because you don't waver from what you believe in, even when I don't like it. And my wife said something similar. So I thought about it for a couple of days, and I thought about it, and I said, I remember back in the 90s, a friend of mine, his name was John, and he said to me, he goes, Chris, he goes, I want you to remember this phrase. He goes, your values only matter when they're inconvenient. And that stuck with me my whole life. And I've really tried to live by that tenet, that if I truly value something, it doesn't matter if it's my family or my faith or my job or friends or just even something as simple as being punctual, if that's important to me, well, those qualities only have value when they're going to hurt you. Other than that, they're just window dressing. So I would say that phrase is really who I am, is that my values matter, especially when they're inconvenient. And it's cost me in my life. I lost a job because I stuck up for what I believed in. And truthfully, I just retired from my job. I was a teacher for 30 years. I just finished working. I used to teach on Murderers Row here in Massachusetts, juvenile detention, juvenile murderers, for 14 to 18-year-old kids. And I retired early because I had some health problems. So I'm thinking of becoming a deacon in the church. And I know, because I know other Masons that have applied for specifically an IT job with the diocese and they put down organizations they belong to, Masonry, and they said no. So I think it's going to be a bit of an issue, but I'm not going to put one ahead of the other, because it's not that I value the tenets of Masonry above my faith. I do not.
Right.
But what I do value is that the reason why my faith is not feeling compatibility with Masonry is based on lies. And that I will not waver on.
I love it. I love it. As you were talking, I started to think sometimes, I've heard the term, well, you're a very convenient Christian or a very convenient Catholic. It's when it works for you. So as you were saying that, it was there. So let's, now that we know a little bit about who Chris is, walk us through your Masonic journey, where you started, just kind of high level, where you started and where you're at today.
Well, I started just about, I don't know, a little over 10 years ago, I think. My wife actually is the one who started, and it really almost died before it ever started. So I was dating a woman, very nice, and we were dating for a while, 6-9 months, whatever. And I found out that she was in a cult. And she brought me to one of her self-help meetings, and it was a cult. And I was like beside myself. I'm like, I want nothing to do with this crap. I'm like, just get
How
me the
long were
hell out
you
of here.
dating this person? Was this a first date? Was this a speed date? Walk me through that.
No, no, no. We were dating a while. We were in a good relationship, and it,
Okay.
it never came up, never came up. We were dating, I'd say 9 months.
And she knew you were Catholic.
Yep. She
Okay.
was too.
Oh, okay.
And she was in, it wasn't a religious cult. It, yeah,
Okay.
it was a little different. I don't want to say the name of what it is
Right.
for just like, let's make it
Is it
easy on
very
everyone's
old
legal
school
team.
Branch Davidian and like David Koresh type stuff?
It's more like, it's kind of more like Scientology.
Okay. Okay.
All right. It's a little more in that direction.
Okay.
It wasn't Scientology, but it was
Sure.
in those lines. They had things like clearings and stuff
Oh,
like that. And
yeah. Yeah.
so we go to one of the meetings, and I'm like, no, I'm like, this is not for me. So we had a little bit of a rough patch, and then we ended up breaking up. Okay. A few months later, I don't know how long, I meet my wife, and I'll just on online dating. It was on, I don't know which one, whatever, one of them. We met and went on a couple of dates. It was great. Our third date, she invited me to her apartment for lunch. I'm like, oh, this is great. And I go into the bathroom, and I see taped to the mirror in her bathroom this piece of index card with cipher. And every Mason knows what that is,
Yeah, sure.
on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And now I don't know anything about Masonry. Okay.
But oh
So
my God, you're thinking it's cult again.
yeah, I am. That's exactly right. I'm like, no way, not twice in a row. And I'm like, this is crazy. So I'm looking at it, and it's like one letter here, two letters here, a weird symbol. I'm like, what? So I come out of the bathroom. I go, hey, Vicky, I go, I saw this thing taped on your mirror in there. I go, you want to tell me what it is? She goes, yeah, it's cipher. You might as well have said it was an alien. I don't know what cipher is.
Right,
I go,
right.
what's
Yeah,
what's
that's not
cipher?
common vernacular.
So she explained it to me that she was about to become worthy matron in the Order of the Eastern Star. And
Okay.
so she had ritual to learn. And I said, well, what do you mean ritual? Like slaughtering sheep? And she goes, no, no, no. And she explained it to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I tell you, I was very on edge with that. My guard was up, and I said, okay. Now I could tell right away, like my current wife, Vicky, who this at the time was my girlfriend. She was very special. And I'm like, all right, let's just breathe and see how this plays out. So we're moving along, and there's nothing else weird. And then she said to me, she goes, Chris, there's a big dinner tonight or this weekend for Masons in Rhode Island. I'd like you to come with me and meet some people. I'm like, oh, okay. She goes, well, it's black tie, you know, and fancy. She goes, trust me, you're going to have a good time. So I went, and within minutes, I saw these guys were different, extremely polite, and nobody was dressed inappropriately. Nobody was speaking overly
Gentlemen.
loud. Nobody got,
Gentlemen.
yeah, and ladies. Nobody was drunk. Whole night went on, and I was like, huh, that was different. And I also saw people greeting each other with genuine affection. Now, in my life up until then, I had never seen or experienced anything like that. I was like, that's interesting. Okay. So, little food for thought. And then again, went to another one, and I'm like, okay. And then the state of Rhode Island has a beautiful park owned by the Masons. It's right on the water. It's 12 acres on the water. And she said, we're having our summer cookout. I'd like you to come. And it was just casual dress. And we brought our picnic basket, and they had food there. And I was watching the kids play and the people interact. And I had like this weird feeling of like nostalgia. Like maybe this is what our country used to be like. Like this is really cool. Like people were really getting along. It was so good. A guy I didn't even know, he just came over and said hello to me. He shook his hand. We just started small talking. An hour later, I was like, wow, that guy was really great. And Vicky said afterwards, did you have a good time? I said, you know, honey, I said, I don't really know what you guys are all into, but I want to learn more. I want to become a part of this because I've never met people that were this wonderful.
Right.
So, local lodge, they have it in Massachusetts. We have open houses every October.
Okay.
So all the lodges have it on the same day. I went to the one that's right down the street from where I'm sitting now, and I filled out an application, met a few of the guys, and a year later, I was signing the bylaws. It's pretty easy. And from there, uh, I didn't have like I didn't understand. I didn't know what I was getting into,
Most,
and I
most
didn't.
most of us don't at first. We think we do, right?
Yeah, so I had no aspirations. And this man, his name's Mario Cabral, and he's a very good friend of mine now. And he, at the time, he was the master who raised me. And he said, Chris, he goes, I think Kevin, the incoming master, needs a fill-in chaplain because the installed chaplain is not doing so well health-wise. I think you should do it. I said, you think I should? He goes, yeah, I think you should. I said, okay. So I did. And Kevin and I became best friends. He's my best friend ever in my life. And and we and I just kind of grew. I was the chaplain for four masters, and I then became, and I am marshal, and next year I'll be senior warden. And during that time, this is the big moment. I was asked by the district deputy, who I did some carpentry work with. I do some carpentry on the side. He hired me to do some work with him. And we just talked every day about masonry and other stuff. And he said, Chris, he goes, this year's district Christmas party, where every lodge has a representative to talk about the first master ever in that lodge. He
Mhm.
goes, will you speak for King David? And I was like, that's the name of my lodge, King David Lodge.
Right.
And I said, yeah. I go, I'd love to. So I did some research, and honestly, I nailed it. Like I I rocked it. I had 5 or 6 people come up and ask me for my contact information when I speak at their lodge and all this stuff. And I'm like, speak about what? I'm like, I just did this. And
Right.
then COVID came around, and the next district deputy contacted me and said, Chris, can you do a Zoom presentation and do a talk on something? And I go, yeah. I said, give me a couple of weeks to figure something out. And I did one on uh, Outlander, the TV show,
Hmm.
because the main character, Jamie, is a Mason,
Okay.
and not in real life on the show.
Of course.
So I took that, what I knew from the books and from the TV show, and put that together and did a talk. And that went really well. In fact, there were several district deputies from around New England that were tuned into that. And I got invited to travel everywhere. I've spoken in New York, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Mass. I've been all over the place since. And that's really how it happened. So now I'm on the Speakers Bureau in Massachusetts. One of the speakers there. I'm also a tour guide at the Grand Lodge in Mass. And like I said to you earlier, I'm the special aide to the Grand Master in Rhode Island.
You were busy. You were busy. So
At times, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Now, any other appended bodies are you in? Are you
Yeah, just Eastern Star. My wife and I are in the East. She's worthy matron again, and I'm first time worthy patron.
very, very cool. So let me go back before we go to our next question. So you're dating this girl for a while. You go to this event. You find out she's in a cult. You trip out. You're like, oh my gosh. You get fast forward. You get out of the relationship. You get on a dating app and you go out on a date. You're 3 dates in. You're going to use the restroom because you're at her apartment. You go in her bathroom and you see all of this strange writing on the wall. You're thinking, "Oh my gosh, I found another cult member." At
Yep.
any point were you saying, what is on my dating profile that is attracting these cult women? Did you have like this moment of like, is it me? Do I have some sort of shirt that says, cult lover?
No, I think at that time I think my first question is, what's wrong with me? And then my and then my second question, maybe my second question to myself was like, more like, is God punishing me? What did I do wrong?
I know that was running through my mind. I would have some self reflection too. So Chris, you're about 10 years in the game.
Hmm.
Why do you think more men aren't joining Masonry today, from your point of view?
Yeah, great question. And it's a question that, unfortunately, because of my position with Mass in Rhode Island, I get this a lot. We talk about it a lot. And I'm going to say something that maybe hasn't been said before. It's our own fault. We caused this problem. And I think if we go back in time to the mid 60s, when Masonry in America was at its peak, and then it just started a slow erosion, there are several factors that led to that. I think, in general, the lack of trust in the government and organizations, more of an isolationist by people staying with their nuclear family and not branching out. I think that was maybe the tip of the iceberg, but there are a couple of things, as I've done a little bit of research on this, that really dig deep. One is, I just finished reading a book, it's called The Nons, and it's a 50-year study from 1972 to 2022 about the non-religious affiliation of Americans. And in 1972, it was about 6% of men had no religious affiliation. Now it's just a hair over 26%. And so right away, because to be a Mason, you have to be a man of faith, our availability pool has shrunk considerably. I think that's number one. So we could see a little bit of there are fewer people that were available. I think number two, our secrecy, our things that we do behind closed doors, shrouded in mysticism, all that stuff. I think it's run its course a little bit. I think that we need to open the doors a bit. And I'm not saying reveal the secrets of anything that we both have agreed not to talk about. I'm not saying
Right.
that,
Right.
especially some of the deeper lessons that are taught through our symbols. Like my favorite symbol and the lessons associated with it are the point within the circle.
Yeah.
There's so much in there about how to control your life, but also on leadership. And I give a talk. I actually gave it at Teddy Roosevelt's Mother Lodge on Long Island in Oyster Bay for their 225th anniversary. They asked me to come and give this talk. It was pretty good. And and I think that those things are really what has separated Masonry from Elks and Rotary and things like that. That we have old lessons that have been passed down for 200 plus years that really help men become better men. And I think that's another problem. I think a man becoming a better man is a tough road nowadays. So we've got a few things going against us, but the biggest obstacle that we face is what I see right behind you, that square and compass. It's ourselves. We we are our own worst enemy because I don't know about you, but I go on YouTube, I watch videos, and I always feel that one of the best ways to look at yourself is to look and see how others view you. So I do watch videos of other people that think Masonry is bad, and I listen and I look at the numbers of subscribers and followers they have. Oh my God. Like it's like a cottage industry to
It
bash
is.
Masonry.
It is.
And we, as an organization worldwide, have done nothing to stop it. I'm all for the First Amendment. You have the right to speak what you believe, but the First Amendment is not a license to slander. It
Right.
just isn't. And I think about one in particular YouTube channel. It was called A Call to an Uprising. I mean, really, he basically blamed Masons on everything in the world, good and bad. It's like
Right.
we run everything. And
Right.
and then the other one is this Catholic priest. His name's Father Chris Atler. And from the pulpit in a church, he gave a 45-minute dissertation as to why Masonry was bad. And I watched the whole thing and I took notes. I'm like, you lied, like just flat out lied. And I've watched other talks that this priest has given. He does excellent research. So I know he uncovered things that did not jive with his mission.
Hmm.
And if you remember last year in the Philippines, there was kind of a big deal about
Huge.
Masonry, and the Philippines are very Catholic. And Pope Francis basically said, guys, you got to choose. And that's because, and I've been to the Philippines. I used to work for the Department of Defense. I was stationed in Guam for 2 years, and I'd been to the Philippines. The Filipinos are very generous people with
There.
their time and their food resources and whatever they may have for money, which most of them is not much, but they will help you in any way they can. They're wonderful, wonderful people. And I think, resources for anyone only goes so far. So if a man in the Philippines has to divide or has to choose and they're choosing Masonry, well, then the church isn't so happy about that. But the reasons are just, as well as I do, the reasons are lies. And a lot of it comes from Leo Taxel,
It does.
author, French. He said things that just are not true. And he said it,
And then
and
he
he
came to the
said it,
press
he admitted
conference and
it.
said, "Hey, it's a rouge."
Yeah,
And yet we're dismissing that part so much. Like, wait, what?
yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that the biggest reason why more men aren't joining is because the disinformation campaign is so broad and so strong and true. And honestly, it's so believable because I've watched, former brothers, they say they're former brothers, come on and say, I was a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason, and I was way up there. And I'm saying to myself, that doesn't mean you're way up there, brother. Like,
And
just stop right now.
what organization and the ones that are 99ths and all that. So I mean, Snowblin's one of them that he's out just spewing hate. And so, and but I think to your point is we have Masons, we've allowed them to kind of talk smack, and we haven't come on and say, hold on right there. And that's what we're doing on all the podcasts. It's like, hey, I see what you're saying, but that's not true. And here's why. Oh, you think we won't let you in the lodge? Great. That the Bible back here, that's a King James version. We've
I
opened
know.
it up. What do you want to see? We don't have secrets. It's not it's a Masonic Bible, but it's not a Masonic Bible. So
Yeah.
yeah, we are just we're something else. But yes, we have turned the other cheek and it's worked against us, Chris.
Yeah, I think we turned it too far.
We
Like
did.
at some point, you do have to stand up for yourself and say we are not tolerating this anymore. Because if you think about this, we're in, I like to say, we are in the second anti-Masonic movement that really started in the late 60s and has been a
Mhm.
slow decline until the last, I'm going to say 15 years, when the information superhighway really made it easy. And
Yep.
then we've kind of fallen off the cliff. But that anti-Masonic movement, we did nothing to stop it. It was such a it's like that old saying, you put a frog in a pot of water and then turn the heat on, and the
Yep.
water gradually warms up and the frog doesn't really realize it, and then the next thing you know, it's dead. We're the frog and we're going to die.
That's a great point. I hate the analogy, but it's a great analogy. So, Chris, now for the point of you coming on the podcast, my friend, um, are men leaving Masonry because we are asking too much of them? Are they coming in? We're like, oh my God, thank you for joining. Let me put you to work.
Not exactly. I think men are leaving because I think there's a philosophy in Masonry when a new man comes in, and the philosophy is an inch deep and a mile wide, that you learn a little bit in your Blue Lodge. Oh, why don't you join York Rite? And oh yeah, well there are other lessons over here in Scottish Rite, or oh, you can join Eastern Star, and then your wife can come with you too. So you're not learning any depth of our organizations. Instead, you're getting the breadth of all the different things that we offer. I think that is again Masonry's biggest blunder. That there's so much that I've only been in my Blue Lodge for the last 10 years. That's it. And Eastern Star,
Right.
because my wife made me. So, but but there's so much to learn. And I'm not even going to pretend that I've scratched the surface, but
Of
I
course.
don't have the mental resources to then, and I want to. York Rite really interests me. I want to join, but I don't have the mental resources to be able to continue learning the lessons that have served Masonry so well for hundreds of years. And oh, let's throw on some more lessons that go in a slightly different direction. And I want to, but I can't. And I think that is the number one problem, that we're not taking our new master masons, and we're not being literally big brothers, which is what we need to do. I think of the brothers that come into my lodge, and they look at me and others, and they're like, wow, you guys are already master masons, and they don't know what I do and don't know what
Right.
I have and haven't done, or
Right.
anyone else, but they do look at every other man that's gone through as, you've done this. So
Mhm.
there's a bit of a looking up to. Well, that is a responsibility more than
It
anything
is.
else.
It is.
You know, and I'll say this quick story. A few years ago, we had three brothers come in. They did their first degree, and when they obligated, they were bad. They struggled with the ritual, with the obligation. They did their second degree, then they obligated, and it didn't get any better. Now, I don't know how it is in Kansas, but in Massachusetts, it is the junior deacon who is responsible for making sure the candidates know their obligation before they can move on.
Right.
They do their third degree, and they come back, and it was so bad that the master stopped it and just said, "No, this isn't happening. Sit on the sidelines." And we went on with our meeting, and that was that. At the end of that meeting, those men were getting dressed, getting ready to go down to dinner. And one of them got dressed, and he made eye contact with me. And he looked at me, and I could just see it in his face. He's like, I'm never coming back. He looked at me, nodded, and I nodded back at him. He walked out the door, never saw him again. And that's not on that is not the men leaving. That is the men in Masonry failing. We
Right.
failed. The
Yeah. You had a
brothers at King David
responsibility.
failed
Yep.
in that particular case.
Yep.
You know,
Yep. I
that's what I
agree.
think.
I agree. We got some slides. Show us what you got, Chris.
Thank you, Brian. So I'm going to go through just kind of the highlights on this. This is one of the talks I give about membership retention. And I started out with this, amen, amen, so mote it be, so say we all for charity. And I ask everyone where this comes from, and most people don't know. And this is actually from the Hallowell manuscript, which is the oldest Masonic document from Scotland. It was originally dated 1390. Some people think it was more about 1425. Either way, it's okay. It's pretty old.
Right.
So what I find interesting about it is, of course, where it says, so say we all for charity, because I don't think of that time frame in human development as charity being an important event, but obviously it was.
Right.
And charity in Masonry goes back, I mean, we're talking pre-Columbus
Yeah.
to really when there were the three estates, the church, the nobility, and then the
Charity takes
peasants.
different forms, though.
It does. It certainly does. And I thought that's a pretty interesting way to start and to hammer home the point that charity is why we're here and it's the most important thing we do. And to say to all of the naysayers about Masonry being evil and ugly and satanic, we're probably just the opposite.
Exactly right.
It's really Corinthians 13:13, faith, hope, and charity, and the greatest of these is charity. So we use an arch to kind of lay out the steps for a new Master Mason. So maybe you felt any of these things when you first became a Mason, confused, unclear. I was unclear. Some people perplexed, bewildered. I remember I gave this talk last night at a lodge I was at, and one brother raised his hand. He goes right here. He goes perplexed. I had no idea what was going on. And that's sad. We shouldn't have that. And then, of course, that can lead to the worst thing in the world, which is where do I fit in? And it's our job as brothers, all up in here, to get this piece in there. And if we don't, what happens is what I just talked to you about those three men that couldn't obligate. This piece keeps going further and further away, and eventually it falls off the table, and we've lost another one.
And I agree. So, Chris, let me jump in. So, I think that when men come in, because we are men and we're not as thoughtful as we could be, we think that, well, this is the way that Chris did it and Brian did it, so John's got to do it this way. No, Chris learns different. Brian learns different. Chris and Brian have a different skill set. John's got a different skill set. So why aren't we qualifying him as a man and say, okay, what's your learning style? What can we do? And then once we get you proved up, that's the easy part. What do you want? What are you looking for in Masonry? And that's when you find the spot. And I think sometimes we think that every person will fit at your lodge or at my lodge, and that we may offer different things at our lodges. And what John may be looking for, the lodge down the street, that's his wheelhouse. And I think that we are just trying to make that one size fits all, and we're not really listening to our folks from the investigation. What are you looking for in Masonry?
Yeah, I think I haven't heard that put so well, and I love it. That's really, really good because for an organization that emphasizes memorization and learning of these lessons so much, we do almost nothing to 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 match it to the learning styles and then match the lodge's output to your wants and desires and what you want to get out of masonry. That was awesome. I'm going to remember
But
that.
but we need to do better at that, right? And
Yeah,
because we all learn differently. And folks that have, we've done seminars and taught people and educated, and everybody learns. And it's not that they're incompetent, their style's just different, and we haven't figured it out. That is
right.
our job.
Yep. So I'm just going to give you two little sets of numbers that kind of hammer this home. Last year in Massachusetts, we lost 900 Masons out of 22,000. Now,
Okay.
some of them passed away, can't do anything about that.
Right.
We had 600 take their first degree, but only 530 take their third degree. So we're in the negative 360. Now, that's a lot. That's a couple of lodges. And oddly, Massachusetts had to merge 3 lodges this year. So we can't continue along those lines. And the reason why we're losing so many men, as we've talked about already, is they're not feeling like they belong. They don't feel like they fit in. And even, I hate to say this, but some of the older members, I know this because Massachusetts did some exit interviewing a few years ago to find out like what's going on with people that are leaving. They're they're actually feeling like not welcome in some instances, like words that are not pretty in masonry. We don't want to hear any of that. And I'll give you the same thing from Rhode Island. So Rhode Island has approximately 12,000 masons. 200 left us. Whether they passed away or demitted or were expelled, just 200 in the red. We had 50 take the first degree and 30 become master masons. That's catastrophic.
The percentage is awful.
And yeah, and we had one lodge in Rhode Island, and there was only 33. Now we're down to 32, and they had to merge. So it's having that long, slow erosion from the 1960s is really starting to show. It is, at least here I am.
Yeah, you know, we spend all of this time investing in men going through their degree work, right? And so, and then we have some that aren't going there. But then there's the part that once we get them to be a master mason, it's almost like we feel like our work is done. I think that's
Yes,
when it starts.
that's awesome because that's something I've talked about that for in my case a year. From the time I applied to the time I signed the bylaws was a year. For a year, me and the brother I went through with, we were the center of attention for the entire lodge. And now, okay, so I've signed the bylaws. I come to the next meeting. I'm sitting on the sidelines, and it's like, what's happening now?
Yeah, you're no
I don't,
longer the star. You're
yeah,
not
I
the
don't
new
understand.
shiny toy.
Right. And I don't even understand half of the stuff that's going on. Nobody's talking to me. I don't get it. And it's such a vacuum. There's such a disconnect after the third degree. And that's why I created this, the Arch. So this is a pathway for Master Masons, and these are our big brothers and how they support them. So I'm going to go through it quick
Yeah.
because you don't need the whole presentation. But basically, we all start out as men of faith. That's our bond as brothers. So we have to have faith. And as I talked about in the beginning, the nons are kind of shrinking that a bit. But then I think the next most important thing is floor work and ritual. And I say that because, and, and all Masons know this, when you walk into a lodge and you start to see the floor work transpire at the beginning of the meeting, you know, and we all know, no one wants to say it, but we all know it. That lodge cares or they don't care.
Especially if it's crisp and just sharp turns.
Right.
And yeah.
And I'll quickly tell you how important this is to Masonry. The first superintendent of West Point, his name is Sylvanus Thayer. He was from Braintree, Mass. He came in because at the time West Point was kind of like going in a bad direction. A lot of the cadets were from wealthy families and they weren't behaved so well.
Mhm.
What he did is he instilled lessons from Freemasonry into West Point that are still there today. And one of them is called drill. It's floor work.
Yep.
And that really shows the importance of that, of being part of something larger than yourself. And the lessons in ritual. And I would never ask a brother to be a ritualist. I'd never ever say that.
Right.
I struggle with ritual. I would never ask someone to do something I can't do. But what you can do is learn the lessons that are in it. Like I'll give a little snippet from what we call our senior warden lecture. So our senior warden lecture, parts of it are in plain English, so I can say this. Parts of it are in cipher. So in plain English, it talks about the size of a lodge, how a lodge is oblong rectangle. It's as long as from east to west,
Right.
as long as yeah, east to west, as broad as from north to south. Maybe you have the same thing in Kansas or similar. And then at the end, it says, we claim these vast dimensions to denote the universality of Masonry and that a Mason's charity should be equally as expansive. That's a very powerful lesson.
Yep.
And you're going to see how this plays back again in just a second. So, learning the lessons of ritual are not just memorization, they're lessons to be learned because they're there to help you in your Masonic and your personal life. I also believe in recreation and relations. And I say this because if you don't get out and do things like, again, King David, I can use as an example. My lodge, we have a couple of really big fundraisers. We have a comedy night. We have a canoe trip. We have a hunting trip. We have meat on a stick. We have things where the brothers just show up and hang out and be friends.
Yes.
And that is where you make your relationships with the brothers. You don't do
Yes,
it
sir.
at dinner.
Yes,
You
sir.
don't do it afterwards when you're having a cigar and a whiskey upstairs. You don't
Sir.
you do a little, but that's not really where you do it. And I think that if you don't start building relationships, it kind of stinks. And I always say to new brothers, I go, listen, you may be an introvert. That's cool. Don't worry about it. You have something different here. We've got ritual. Now think about something you heard in ritual you don't understand. Walk up to a brother and ask him. Say, hey, when so and so said this particular line, what did that mean? Now that brother may have an answer and be like, well, that means da da da. All right, conversation started. That's awesome. But what if they don't? You know what they're going to do? I'm going to say, I don't know what that is, but my friend Kevin over here does. Come on. And now your anxiety about meeting people is completely alleviated because not only did you talk to someone that you had a little bit of a relationship with, you have now also made another friend and
Yep.
you're learning something.
Yep.
And finally, vocation and charity. And this is the one where I've watched so many Masons fall off the cliff, and it makes me so sad. They come into the lodge, they have these great ideas. Like maybe you're a carpenter, maybe you are good with electronics, maybe you're a cook, and they want to dive right in with their vocation and help out the lodge, but they really they don't understand Masonry. They don't have the cachet to make it work properly. And then, of course, charity. So this is probably going to be my last story. I like to tell stories. So we had this brother come in, and he's a wonderful guy. And in our November meeting, he stands up to the lodge and he says, I know of this family in Fall River. Now, Fall River is about 15 miles away from Taunton. And he goes, they're in they're destitute this Christmas. And could we donate a couple of $100 so the kids could have something under their tree for Christmas? And an old brother in the lodge stands up and says, there are lodges in Fall River just for this purpose. We should focus on Taunton. And I find that a crime against Masonry because right in our ritual, a Mason's charity should be equally as expansive. Who cares where somebody put a line on a map? If
Right.
you know of a family that needs help, help them.
Right.
So
Right.
I say that, and we use this metaphor of the arch. The arch is our brother's path, but supporting them is our responsibility. We have to be big brothers. These are Corinthian columns, and Corinthians 13:13, which is faith, hope, and love. But it's not just any love, it's agape, the love of giving, and specifically the love of giving what is needed. And I think that that is so important in what we do. And I want to spread, I'm thankful, Brian, that you've had me on because I want to be able to spread this message to everyone, Mason and non. I'm sure you have non-Mason listeners. I want people to know who we are and what we're about and to not listen to all the negativity and just believe in your heart what you know and what you see to be what it is. Because what we see, or I should say, what most people see, and they say, oh, I know so and so, he was a Mason. Oh, he was a good guy. That line follows everyone. They were a good guy. Okay, well, if you're seeing that all the time, but then you're hearing on this YouTube channel about how awful we are, I understand you're struggling with that. I get it. Well, I want to make the difference. I want people to listen to me, and I want them to say, no, this is who we are. This is what we do. And thank
We
you.
need to represent the brand, and you know, you've watched episodes and you'll hear us say the brand is not the square and compasses that's behind us. The brand is the men that are in the organization.
Yeah.
And if they are not carrying themselves like gentlemen, as men, that's a problem. But you know, we want to be represented in when folks see and they say, "Oh, Chris is a Mason, Brian's a Mason, man, they're solid." And
Yeah.
then that's just kind of that brand. It makes you want to be part of that. Nobody wants to be part of an organization with knuckleheads. Period. I now, if you do, then you're definitely not a Mason
No, you're not
because
for us.
right.
And
And
that's
so
okay.
some
That's
people
okay. We're
like
not for
chaos, and
everyone.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their thing.
Right.
But for Masons, we have to represent the brand and be willing to talk about it. And to your point, a lot of our listeners are non-Masons. People, we are an open book. I've said it before, and I'm going to speak for Chris. If you would call him and say, "Hey, I'm not a Mason, but would you give me a tour of your lodge?" Pretty sure he'd be open to that.
Not only that, if you're in the New England area and you'd like a tour of the third oldest Grand Lodge in the world, the Grand Lodge of Boston, I'm one of the tour guides there. I'll be more than happy to do that for you.
You heard it here. Now, so how can we be keeping secrets if we're going to let you in?
Right.
It just doesn't make sense. What in the world do you have up here, and why is it important for our listeners to know about this?
So in May, we as we've talked about all night is that we're struggling with brothers being engaged. And Massachusetts has a couple of programs in place. Rhode Island has a couple in place. One in Massachusetts called the Rookie Awards, where you have certain things you need to do. And it's really traveling and getting involved and helping you to understand more aspects of the craft. I'm sure you have the same thing in
It's a
Kansas.
type of passport.
Right. But I created this 2 years ago. Um, that same gentleman I mentioned earlier, Mario Cabral, who's now the district deputy, he literally gave me a bag of pins that said traveling man on it. And he said, Chris, have some fun with this, make something up. And I spent a good amount of time doing it. This is the second rendition, and I think it's pretty good. The first one was a little too difficult. And basically, what it is to get the brothers out and do what I find to be my favorite thing in Masonry is to travel and meet the brothers. I love it. And I don't, I couldn't tell you why I do. I just do. So it's called the Traveling Man. And in short, in one calendar year, a Master Mason will be required to do a few different visitations of different things. And there are three paths. The first one is called the Statesman, where you'll go to an out of state lodge, get your passport signed. We also added out of district lodge as well, out of state and out of district.
Makes sense.
I'm going to jump down to this third one because I love the second one so much. The third one is the Tyler's Sword. Pretty straightforward. Again, we have about 5 lodges in each district, give or take. And just throughout a calendar year, speak with the master ahead of time and say, I'd like to be your Tyler tonight. So the Tyler, instead of sitting outside the doors, can come in and take part of the meeting.
Right.
I think that's a great gesture and a great
Yep.
way to start building friendships and bonds. But this one here, the Fallen Brother, is very near and dear to my heart. 3 years ago was the 225th anniversary of my Mother Lodge, King David. And I did some talks on the history and I did some research. During the Civil War, there was a brother. He wasn't a master. He wasn't, a right worshipful, none of that. He was just a brother on the sideline. His name was Isaac Dean Paul. And he went off to fight in the Civil War and he never came home. He died in Virginia. The doctor that basically sewed him up into a cotton bag saw he had his Masonic traveling papers with him, and the doctor was a Mason as well. So he gathered up his belongings and mailed them back to his wife with a map that the doctor drew of where he was buried on this farm
Wow.
and the name of the owner and all this. The wife, she took this information, went to King David and said, can you bring my husband home? So the brothers at King David wrote to this farmer and he said, yes, I know exactly where your friend is buried. If you come here, I'll help you dig up the body and you can take him home. So they went from Massachusetts to Virginia by horse and buggy, dug up a body and brought it home
Wow.
because
Talk
one of our,
about fulfilling your obligation. We're
I
not
was
going
just going to say that,
as a Mason.
right? Widows and orphans.
Oh,
Now, that's a tremendous story, and it gets even better because in 1885, 20 years after this brother died, the master of King David Lodge, his name was Isaac Dean Paul Jr. It was his son, who
wow.
was 10 years old when 2 brothers from the lodge brought his dad home. And I think that story encapsulates everything as to who we are as men and Masons. So to fulfill part 2, the Fallen Brother, you visit an out-of-state lodge and you get one of their members to come back to your mother lodge. And I was very proud this year. I had 2 brothers join me in this to see if we could actually do it. And they did. They completed it. So it was pretty awesome journey, and really they loved it. Both of them loved it. One had been a Mason since '93, and he said, "I've never traveled like this before." He goes, "I've been a Mason, 30 plus years, and I've never traveled like this. He goes, I've been wasting my whole life. Like this is awesome." And all it took was someone
I
to
love it.
just give him a little avenue.
So, brothers that are watching this, speaking of charity, Chris has been very generous. And in the video description, you'll see Chris's contact information. And if you would like to have a copy of this, you can reach out to Chris. He would be more than happy to spread this across the boards.
Thank you. I
Right?
really would.
That's great. So, Chris, before we close out, you've got yourself some shiny swag there. Tell us what you have before we close out.
All right. In Massachusetts, every 3 years, they have an awards night. It's called the Golden Gavels. And that Traveling Man program was nominated. And there were probably 30 other lodges that submitted a nomination for best traveling program. And I am very proud to be able to say that the Brothers of King David and we stood proudly on the stage and we took home a golden gavel. And it only happens once every 3 years, and it's just wonderful. And I couldn't have done it without obviously all of the brothers in the lodge, the ones that traveled with me to make it work, and the current worshipful master. His name is Ken Westberg, who is a tremendous man, a wonderful, wonderful friend. And we would not be who we are today as a lodge if it wasn't for his and I mean this sincerely, his love for all of us.
I love that. I love that. Well, congrats. And more than anything, Chris, thanks for joining the Old Fashioned Masonic Podcast. Cheers.
Cheers to you as well, my brother.